What's going on, everybody? This is B. Scott. I'm here with the third wheel. It's week 11. We're talking waivers. It's the first 4 downs, man. Let's get it. What's going on, everybody? Week 10's in the books. And it's time to look ahead for the waiver wire. It's week 11, and hopefully you're still fighting. You know what I mean? You're trying to make the playoffs. It's getting to crunch time. You're making that push. And this week we got a few guys with key injuries that might help you down the stretch. So we're gonna dive right into it, man. Let's start with the running back position. And the number one ad right now is gonna be Brian Hill.
Has to be.
Yeah. So what I like about him is Devontae Freeman has not looked good all year. I mean, he's had some okay games, subpar games, but he hasn't looked good. And he's got an ankle injury. Who knows how serious it can be. So this week, he's got the Carolina Panthers. Obviously, it's a good matchup. And the Panthers, man, they're one of the bottom 5 teams in the league against the rush.
Yeah, just ask Aaron Jones.
Exactly. So 3 touchdowns. So I like Brian Hill in the short term. Definitely a stream option this week, but I'm not sure of his long-term availability, what you can get out of him. I mean, you look at the next 4 weeks, he's got Tampa Bay and New Orleans, then another game against Carolina. I mean, who knows how long Freeman's going to be out. Is he worth your number one waiver claim? I mean, if you need him this week, it's a must-win, yeah, possibly. He could be a viable option. But outside of this week, I'm hard-pressed to burn my number one waiver on him.
Yeah, but this week is actually good enough, honestly. I mean, the kid coming out of college, he's explosive, he's fast, he's strong, he puts his head down, he can run somebody over. He had ball security issues coming out of college, so who knows if he actually cleared those up. But coming out of Atlanta, they're actually kind of high on who he could actually be. That's why they've had him around now for a couple of years, still even in that backup role. But this week, of course, I'm going to roll him. Easy.
Yeah, he outperformed Ito Smith at times in the preseason. That's what they said. That's why they kept him on, and they like him a lot. So definitely a viable option. Next option, I'm gonna say Darius Geis, the Washington Redskins. And if you have a chance to get him, I mean, coming off the bye week and everything else, his schedule is looking pretty nice. And them switching to Dwayne Haskins, they're probably not going to be throwing the football that much. Don't get me wrong, they're going to have to learn to do that run-pass option type thing, I think, to help out the offense. Dwayne Haskins has really struggled in the pocket, so I like Darius Geis a lot. Yeah, Adrian Peterson is still there, and he's still chugging along. Put over 100 yards on the Bills, before the bye week. So, but Darius Geis is set up nice. I mean, they played the Jets, the Panthers, the Lions, Green Bay over the next 4 weeks. Those are 4, bottom 10 run defenses.
Well, and with Chris Thompson still being out, that's pretty good. But yeah, AP's had 18.75 over the last 4 weeks as far as carries, just actual touches. He just continually gets looks.
It's that offense the coach said they wanted to run the football, and they've switched to it. So
yeah, it's really kind of hard to tell if they stick with AP or they go directly back to guys. Coming off an injury that long, it looks more like a split, at least for the next week or so, to me. Well,
the Jets' defense is actually pretty good against the run, so I wouldn't be firing guys up right away week 1. Or week 11, I should say, right back. I mean, of course, I think they're going to ease them back in, but you look at after that, I mean, the schedule bodes well. Detroit Lions, Carolina Panthers, Green Bay Packers, those are pretty good teams to be able to run the football on. So I like Darius Geis definitely in the long term. So, but yeah, of course, you got to worry about AP and worry about Chris Thompson if and when he comes back. I mean, we'll have to wait and see. Last running back is going to be J.D. McKissick on the Detroit Lions. And last week you saw they had 10 carries for 36 yards. He caught 6 passes. So in PPR format, I think it bodes well for him. You look at Stafford with the injury, and he could be out long term. You don't know. It's a week-to-week basis at this moment. They're saying it's possible he comes back this week, but if he doesn't, I still see a lot of dump-offs and a lot of volume for, McKissick and the way Ty Johnson, I think, got the concussion. Yeah. Trey Carson, one of those two. They ended up getting a concussion just this last week, so you don't know if that guy's going to be back. You could see a lot of McKissick getting a lot of volume.
Yes, even though I really don't like that running game over there, he's still a guy I think is going to get touches and
the
volume.
schedule. the schedule doesn't bode well. Dallas, Washington, then he's got Chicago, Minnesota. So the schedule's not pretty for him. But if you're hurting at running back, at the running back position, you might take a chance and, you might have to start him in a spot or two. You got some big bye weeks this week, next week, so. But for me, that's about it for the running back position. We could turn over the wide receivers. And the number one wide receiver, I would say, has got to be Deebo Samuel. I mean, you saw last night, he played pretty well in that crazy overtime loss. And with the injury to Emmanuel Sanders, not knowing the extent of it, whether he's going to miss a lot of time. And then Kittle, he's kind of day-to-day with that injury. Ruled inactive this last week. If he's not back, Deebo could see a ton of volume. And then on top of that, he played pretty darn well. I mean, he was explosive, and he fought for extra yards. He did everything he could. So, and the schedule, Arizona, Green Bay, Baltimore, New Orleans. Now, it sounds on paper, that's a tough schedule. Don't get me wrong. But the Niners look like a team that's going to be fighting, period. So if they can't get that running game going, which has struggled the last couple weeks, Jimmy G, 46 attempts last night, they're going to be throwing the football in these games. If they're going to stay in, they're going to have to be throwing the football. I'm guessing so.
Yeah, he's definitely a solid pickup because you're right. I think they're going to start to be a little bit more sluggish on that run game. Probably have to turn Jimmy G later on in the season. I mean,
and they can run the football, but the last couple weeks you've seen a little bit of struggles. And the defense, although it's been really, really good, has shown some leaks a little bit, in certain areas. So Deebo Samuel's definitely a high ad for me. Of course, it's shaky on a team that's run heavy first. But I think the matchups down the road, they're going to be having to throw the football, plain and simple, if they want to stay in these games. Green Bay, New Orleans, Baltimore, they're going to have to throw the football. It's plain and simple. So next wide receiver after that, Darius Slayton. New York Giants. And this is a guy I've talked about a couple weeks where he's put up monster numbers in spots and he's disappeared in spots. But this week was a perfect prime example. Danny Dimes on the road has played very well. So Darius Slayton on a team where Golden Tate's really the only receiver option. You got Evan Ingram out with an injury. Who knows if he comes back this year? You got Sterling Shepard out with an injury. Who knows if he comes back this year? And the schedule, albeit over the next few weeks, is tough. The playoff schedule is a cakewalk. And
Philadelphia, Miami.
Yeah, Philadelphia, Miami, Washington. Don't get me wrong. They're on bye this week, so, if he's out on your waiver and you don't have to burn it this week, or maybe a late week pickup if you got a spot. And then after that, when they come out of bye, they got Chicago and Green Bay. That's two tough teams to throw the football on. So, by all means, Slayton is definitely a guy that you're holding on to for the playoffs for the future.
Yeah, well, and the problem is he put up such a big game going into the bye that somebody's going to grab him. You can't just try and hope that he's going to be there after the waivers go through.
So, and then one other guy, he's on about almost 60% of leagues, is Dede Westbrook. Now, he's coming off an injury with the shoulder, neck issues that he's had. You see Nick Foles coming back from his injury, and I think they're going to be poised to throw the football. The back-end schedule, it bodes well in the playoffs. They got Oakland, they got the Chargers, the Raiders, and the Falcons, 14, 15, 16. So if Dede can get healthy enough, I see a lot of volume that he can get. Him, Conley, DJ Chark, all those guys can produce on a weekly basis. So he's definitely a guy that, you could take a chance on. Even in a little bit of tougher matchups, Indy, Tennessee, he's still a viable option. And you got the big buys coming up, week 12 with the Chiefs and everything like that. So he's definitely a receiving option for me at the wide receiver position.
Yeah, of course. Even Tampa Bay sitting there at week 13. It's just, he's got a pretty soft schedule.
Yeah, it should bode well for him, especially in that second half, that late half. So let's look at some quarterbacks. And for me, I talked about Kyle Allen, I want to say last week and the week before. And he's not going to blow you out of the water. Of course not. But the way they can run the football, it bodes well for the passing game, plain and simple. So Curtis Samuel, DJ Moore, they're playing pretty well. And even Greg Olsen, as old as he is. So Kyle Allen has Atlanta twice in the next 4 weeks with New Orleans and Redskins, the Washington Redskins. So that 4-week stretch is a pretty good schedule to have a quarterback that can potentially get 20 fantasy points on a weekly basis.
Yeah, he's very consistent. He's just young, so just like Kyler Murray and young quarterbacks, they can move the ball up and down the field. He's consistent. But when it comes time for the red zone and actually scoring, I think that's where he's just not punching it in. So you're not going to get those super numbers.
Well, yeah, and they got Chris McCaffrey. You guys got 13, 14 touchdowns on the year, so I get it. But he's definitely a consistent option over the next few weeks. Another guy also, this week you can stream is Derek Carr against Cincinnati Bengals. Look for him to get about 20 fantasy points. That's a Derek Carr game. So if you're struggling on that quarterback start this week, I mean, with the buys, you got Green Bay, Aaron Rodgers. You know, let's say we're playing Daniel Jones. He's on bye. Russell Wilson on bye. Ryan Tannehill even. Ryan Tannehill last 4 weeks, over 20 fantasy points.
22% owned right now, Sam Darnold. 22% owned. As bad as he has kind of looked, he also showed this last week on what he actually can do sometimes.
Which was okay.
Yeah, which was okay, but if you look at his matchups, what? Washington, Oakland, Cincinnati, Miami over the next 4 weeks, owned in 22% of leagues.
Yes.
He needs to be owned way up there right now. He's my waiver quarterback this week.
Well, he's definitely a streaming option on a weekly basis, but I'm hard pressed to, like I said, he just hasn't shown anything. I mean, even this week, you look at, he had 2 touchdowns, 1 on the ground, 1 through the air, and 20 fantasy points, something like that. He has the potential to have some big games. Don't get me wrong, but he is far from trustworthy.
Well,
for me.
Yeah.
So, last quarterback, I've talked about him for weeks and weeks, is Daniel Jones. Plain and simple. The guy plays well on the road, too. 3 games on the road this year with 30-plus fantasy points. So, he's on bye this week. He's got Chicago. He's got Green Bay next 3 weeks. So, you're probably not starting him. But playoff schedule bodes well. He's on the road against Philly, which is a divisional matchup. So, that's a tough matchup. But you see Daniel Jones playing very well on the road. And then you got Miami and Washington. So, Daniel Jones is a quarterback that you could stream all 3 of your playoff matchups, plain and simple. So, I'd be aiming to get him, try and set him on the end of your bench for the future. So, yeah, that's quarterback position. We move right to the tight ends. And the tight ends for me, number 1, it's a no-brainer, Jacob Hollister, Seattle Seahawks. 3 touchdowns in the last 2 weeks, and they're targeting him. Russell Wilson made money with Will Disley. You already saw it in the beginning of the year. Yep. He goes out. Hollister playing great football, made an amazing catch in the end zone last night. It was pretty amazing. He was attached to his defender, just got off enough to fall and catch it. So, amazing play. 80 yards receiving, I want to say, last night in a touchdown. In an offense, it's very high-powered. And then on top of that, the schedule and the way the defense for the Seattle Seahawks is, they're going to be throwing the football. They're going to be moving that offense down the field. They put together some great drives yesterday. And with Russell Wilson, they always are usually pretty consistent with, long drives. And he likes his tight ends in the red zone. You saw that, like I said, with Disley, and now it's Hollister. So he's definitely my number 1 tight end. Even though they're on bye, I would probably be going out and picking him up. Got Philly, Minnesota, the Rams, the Panthers, and then week 16, the worst team against the tight end, the Arizona Cardinals. So you got to get Hollister, plain and simple.
Yeah, especially if you're weak at that tight end spot, which for some people, depending on your league, is always up and down. So
yeah. And then I would also look at Ryan Griffin. And like you said with Sam Darnold, even though I'm not a huge fan of him, definitely a streaming option. Ryan Griffin, 2 weeks without Chris Herndon, played pretty well, produced well. Then Chris Herndon comes in, and he doesn't do anything this week, but Herndon is now pretty much ruled out for the season. And I'm hard pressed to even see him play another football game. I'm shocked they haven't put him on the IR yet. They're not making the playoffs. So
yeah.
But I like Griffin. Definitely as a streaming option. Like you said with the schedule, it bodes well, man. Washington, Oakland, Cincy, Miami. All teams that you can score some points on. So Ryan Griffin's definitely a tight end option over the next few weeks. One last guy that I kind of want to mention, Jack Doyle. You want to bring up Jack Doyle?
Yes. Well, Jack Doyle, he's just, sometimes it's up and down, but he is so good when he's targeted. He's got great hands at the tight end spot. And yes, it's Ebron over there, and they both split. But, there's certain games he just produces, and you kind of gambling with him. But if you're gambling the tight end spot, I think Doyle is a guy you just kind of throw in there and hope for the best.
Yeah, of course. the reason I like Doyle is just because there's no pass catchers over there right now. Outside of Pascal, T.Y. Hilton's hurt. Paris Campbell's hurt. There's not very many trustworthy options. Brissett is hurt. I don't know. We'll see if he comes back. Hoyer was throwing the tight end all day. So you look at Ebron and Jack Doyle, both seeing enough volume where you could start both tight ends. And I definitely could see that in the next couple weeks. But once T.Y. Hilton's back, Paris Campbell, that might change when Brissett's healthy. They still got Marlon Mack. So
yes,
I like Doyle in spots. Don't get me wrong.
In spots.
But, of course. So a couple defenses to note this week. Oakland has been actually pretty well, has played pretty well this season, despite some disasters. The Green Bay Packers. That was a disaster. But last week you saw it against the Chargers. Pick 6, 3 interceptions on Phillip Rivers. And this week they got Cincinnati Bengals. Ryan Finley's still the starter. So, and of course the Raiders are on the road. So
I'm sorry for all you Cincinnati fans. I really am.
I'm telling you.
It looks bad.
So definitely Oakland is a viable stream this week. And then one other is the Jets. Jets defense. They've been very good against the run, and they've been mediocre against the pass. But Jamal Adams, last week you saw him rip the ball out of his hand, out of Daniel Jones' hands, running in for a touchdown. And the defense isn't that bad. And then they're playing the Redskins this week, and Dwayne Haskins is first start.
He's a rook, man.
And he's coming out of his bye. I get it. They're coming out of a bye, so it's the prime time for Haskins to finally get some legs underneath him, I would say, to be ready. But he hasn't proven to me that he's, played that well. He played decent before the bye week. Don't get me wrong, but he hasn't shown flashes of greatness yet. So yeah, I would definitely stream the Jets defense coming off that big game against the Giants. So yeah, that about wraps it up. It's week 11. That's the waiver wire. And if you like this video, feel free to hit that thumb and definitely hit the bell and subscribe, man. First 4 downs. We out.